History is not written in ink, but in the blood of those who dared to defy the gods. To understand the Sundering, the wound that nearly bled the world dry, one must first understand the man who held the blade. Malekith was born into a shadow that was both glorious and terrifying. He was the son of Inarion, the first Phoenix King, the savior who had held the line against the infinite tides of chaos. From his father, Malekith inherited a divine right to rule, a martial brilliance, and an expectation of absolute fealty. But Inarion had drawn the cursed sword of Cain, the god of murder, to save his people. In doing so, he doomed his lineage. From his father's cursed blade, Malekith inherited a latent darkness, a cold ambition that would simmer in his marrow for centuries. When Inarion fell, saving the world one final time, the princes of Ulthuan gathered in the shrine of Asuryan. Malekith stood ready to claim his inheritance. He was a warrior without equal, a general who had commanded armies, the rightful, logical heir. But the princes looked upon the son and saw only the father's potential for madness. They feared the cold steel in his eyes and the shadow of Cain that seemed to cling to his steps. They chose Bel-Shanar, a merchant prince from Tiranoc, a man of peace, a man of ledgers and compromise. Malekith did not scream. He did not rebel. Not yet. He bowed. He smiled. He pledged his blade to the new king with a grace that masked his boiling fury. But in that moment of silence, the great betrayal was born. To prove his loyalty, and perhaps to escape the suffocating peace of the royal court, Malekith led the elven fleets away from Ulthuan into the terrifying unknown of the great ocean. This voyage sparked a new golden age of exploration. Malekith didn't just find new lands, he established the greatest elven colony in history, the sprawling citadel city of Ulthuan, built on the coast of the Old World. Under Malekith's rule, it became a wonder of white marble and shining silver towers, a capital that rivaled the cities of Ulthuan. It was a monument to his leadership, proof that he could build as effectively as he could destroy. It was from Ulthuan that Malekith's greatest friendship was formed. He traveled deep into the world's edge mountains and met Snorri Whitebeard, the High King of the Dwarves. Snorri was a leader of absolute honor, as stubborn as the stone he lived in, and a warrior of incredible power. Where the elves prized agility and elegance, the dwarfs valued strength, resilience, and unyielding oaths. Malekith and Snorri Whitebeard found a deep, mutual respect that transcended their species' differences. They were opposites, yet they were both kings in all but name, defined by duty. Snorri trusted Malekith implicitly, calling him dwarf friend. They fought back-to-back against green-skinned hordes, cementing an alliance with blood and shared victory. Two races, at the height of their power, joined in a brotherhood that should have lasted for eternity. But distance does not heal a wounded ego. It only gives it room to fester. While Malekith conquered the physical world, creating an empire in his own image, his mother, Morathi, was conquering the spirit of Ulthuan. Left in the paradise of the inner kingdoms, Morathi grew bored and resentful. She was the first to recognize the cults of pleasure, shadowy cabals dedicated to dark, forbidden sensations and hidden knowledge. These cults were subtle at first, masked behind philosophical societies and artistic gatherings. But they sought to turn the elven heart, already naturally prone to excess, towards self-indulgent, decadent worship. Morathi didn't just observe these cults, she cultivated them, becoming their secret high priestess. She wove a web of political blackmail, psychological corruption, and dark magic that paralyzed the kingdom's leadership. When Malekith returned to his homeland expecting a triumph, he did not find a home. He found a kingdom divided by secrets and paralyzing indecision. Morathi, ever his most potent ally, whispered into his ear. She spoke of the prince's utter weakness. She painted the peaceful Phoenix King Bel-Shanar as a pathetic placeholder, a man who had allowed the elves to grow soft. She told Malekith that he was the only one strong enough to purge the rot, and that the only way to save the elves from themselves was to seize the crown that was rightfully his. Malekith, seeing the decay of his father's dream, began to believe his own myth. He convinced himself that he wasn't seeking power for his own sake. He was the only one capable of wielding it. The end began with a great feast. Malekith, acting as the kingdom's self-appointed savior, accused the Phoenix King of being a cultist. He accused the princes of treason against Inarian's memory. But the true traitor was the one holding the gavel. Slow-motion chaos erupted as the doors of the Grand Hall slammed shut. Bel-Shanar died in his own chambers, a victim of Malekith's cold, poisoned ambition. The princes were slaughtered by Malekith's elite guard. The white stones of the shrine of Asuryan, the holiest place in Ulthuan, were stained a color they could never wash away. This was the moment of destiny. If Malekith was the true king, the eternal flame of Asuryan would embrace him. If he was worthy, the god of the sun would bless his reign. He stepped into the massive white-hot wall of the fire, but the flame did not bless. It judged. It saw the murder in his heart, the cold ego, the rot in his very soul, and it rejected him. A scream that shook the world echoed through the shrine. He was cast out, his skin flayed, his lungs scorched, his beautiful face a ruin of charred meat and bone. He had sacrificed everything for the crown, and the crown had set him on fire. But Malekith would not die. Through dark sorcery and the unyielding iron will of his mother, a suit of black armor was forged, fused to his very flesh by the anvil of Hotek. The prince was dead. The hero was forgotten. In his place stood the Witch King of Nagaroth, a terrifying silhouette of spiked steel. The Sundering had begun, a civil war that would sink continents, break an alliance, and divide a race for 10,000 years. History is written by the victors, but the Witch King, he is still writing.
The tragedy of the elves is not that we fell, but that we fell from such a height. Before the Sundering, Nagaroth was the shield of the world. It was a land of bleak beauty, of jagged obsidian cliffs, grey mist, and the hardiest warriors to ever draw a bow. We were the line against the chaos wastes. We were the keepers of the north. But pride is a rot that starts at the top, and Malekith was the crown that brought the ceiling down. When the fire of the shrine of Asuryan rejected him, it didn't just burn his flesh, it scorched the soul of every living elf. The civil war that followed wasn't fought for borders or resources. It was a war fought for the right to define what it meant to be elven. And in that struggle, we lost our humanity. Malekith returned to Nagaroth not as a prince, but as a phantom encased in iron. The forge fires of Anlek burned day and night, fueled by sorcery and the screams of the unwilling. He began the scarring, a systematic erasure of anyone who remembered the old ways. In the high halls where poets once sang of Inarian's valor, now there was only the rhythmic clank of the Black Guard's boots.
Reclaiming the light they stole from my youth. High priestess whisper.
Imagine the silence of a city that has lost its heart. The noble families were dragged into the plazas. They were given a choice that wasn't a choice. Swear fealty to the Iron Crown or feed the ravens. Thousands died in those first few months. The blood didn't just stain the streets, it soaked into the bedrock of Nagaraith, turning the very stone into a monument of betrayal.
I am the magician, I am the fool on the hill, bending the cosmos to the power of my will.
In the center of this storm stood the House of Anar. They were the keepers of the traditions, the ones who refused to bow to a burned usurper. Malekith made an example of them. He didn't just kill the elders, he made it a spectacle. Alith Anar, the young heir, was forced to watch from the shadows as his father and grandfather were broken.
Carving out a temple in the middle of the dark. Acid lines are biting like a serpent.
He watched the light leave their eyes and felt his own heart turn into a piece of cold flint.
Violent holy grace, leaving every shackle in a far and distant place.
In that moment, the prince died and the Shadow King was born. He didn't cry out. He didn't weep. He simply vanished into the mountain mists. He became a ghost before he ever truly died. For the years, Alith lived as a beast among the crags. He hunted with the white wolves of the north, shedding the silks of royalty for the hides of predators. He was waiting for a sign, a purpose beyond mere survival. It came in the ruins of a defiled temple. Kernus, the hunter god, was seeking a champion who didn't fear the dark. Alith stood before the stone altar and reached into a pillar of cold, blinding white light to claim the moonbow. It wasn't a weapon of wood and string. It was a manifestation of pure, focused hatred. The first time he drew the string, he didn't aim at a target. He aimed at the destiny Malekith had written for him. He tore it up and began writing his own. One man is a tragedy, but 100 men are a revolution. Alith began to find the others, the dispossessed, the survivors of the massacres, the elves who had lost everything but their will to kill. They didn't wear the shining silver of the Phoenix Guard. They wore grey cloaks the color of a winter sky. They smeared their faces with charcoal and ash. They became the Shadow Warriors. They were the first to realize that you cannot fight a monster with honor. You have to become something worse. They learned to move without sound, to strike without warning, and to disappear before the first body hit the ground. They became the nightmare that kept the Druki awake in their fortified towers. Mal Alith fought in the shadows. Morathi was poisoning the light. In the hidden chambers of Anlek, she cultivated the cults of pleasure. She understood that a soldier who fights for a cause might tire, but a soldier who fights for his own darker desires is a slave forever. she introduced the elves to forbidden sensations, to the touch of Slaaneshi influence, and to the thrill of the kill. The war became a drug. The nobility of Nagarith began to revel in the cruelty. They decorated their armor with hooks and spikes, not for defense, but to prolong the agony of those they touched. The divide was no longer political, it was spiritual. One side was fighting for the memory of the light, and the other was dancing in the encroaching dark. The tension could only hold for so long before it broke into open slaughter. The Battle of Malekith was the climax of this internal rot. Imagine a field so wide you cannot see the ends, covered in two oceans of elven steel. On one side, the loyalists from the south, desperate to save their brothers. On the other, the ironclad legions of the Witch King. When they met, the sound wasn't the heroic clash of shields. It was the sound of a family tearing itself apart. The loyalist mages and the Druki sorcerers turned the sky into a kaleidoscope of lethal energy. Fire rained upward. The earth groaned under the weight of the magic being unleashed.
To the power of my will.
As the hours turned into days, the field of Malekith stopped being a meadow and became a swamp of blood. Men drowned in the gore of their own kin. It was here that Alith Anar's vision proved its worth. While the great armies ground each other into dust in the center, the shadow warriors moved through the periphery like a cold wind. They picked off the Druki commanders. They caused chaos in the rear lines. Alith himself saw Malekith across the field, a black silhouette against the fires of war. He loosed an arrow from the moonbow. It was a shot that should have ended the war. It struck the Witch King's breastplate with the force of a falling star, but the dark enchantments of the armor held. Malekith didn't fall, but for the first time, he felt fear. He realized that as long as Alith Anar lived, he would never truly own the shadows. The battle ended in a stalemate of absolute exhaustion. The Druki retreated to the safety of Anlek, and the Loyalists were too broken to pursue. But the true damage was done to the world itself. The massive discharge of magical energy at Malekith had weakened the Great Vortex. The land of Nagarith was physically cracking. Massive fissures began to open, exhaling the scent of sulfur and old magic. The mountains began to tremble. It was a warning that the world could no longer sustain the weight of such hatred. The sundering wasn't just coming. It had already begun in the hearts of the combatants. So here we are, at the edge of the end. Malekith is in his tower, plotting to break the world to fix his pride. Alith Anar is in the mists, a king of nothing but ghosts and vengeance. The elves are no longer a race. We are a collection of fragments, held together by the memory of a light we can no longer see. The Shadow King still walks the ridges of the north. He doesn't look for peace. He doesn't look for a home. He looks for the next target. Because in a world of shadows, the only thing that matters is who strikes first. The vortex is screaming, soul hacker. Can you hear it? It's the sound of a race realizing it has run out of time. The stalemate had become a cancer, eating away at the sanity of the elven race. Malekith, the Iron King, looked upon his diminishing borders and realized that time was a luxury he no longer possessed. He was the son of Anarion, the rightful heir to a world that refused to recognize him, and his fury had reached a point of critical mass. In the obsidian depths of Anlik, surrounded by the weeping ghosts of his own kin, he made a pact with the void. He did not merely want to conquer Ulthuan anymore. He wanted to punish the very geography of the world for its defiance. He would reach into the engine room of reality, the Great Vortex, and strip the gears until the world ground to a halt. At his side, Marathi played the final notes of her long symphony. She saw the fraying edges of her son's mind and stitched them together with dark sorcery. She whispered of a world reborn in their image, a world where the laws of physics and morality were replaced by their absolute will. Together, they gathered the Cabal, the most depraved sorcerers to ever walk the mortal plane, and began the march toward the Isle of the Dead. They didn't march with drums. They marched with the sound of grinding stone and the low hum of the abyss. The air around them began to distort, the grass turning to glass under their feet as they approached the center of the world's magical heartbeat. But fate had one final card to play. From the smoking calderas of Caledor came the Prince of Dragons, the man who bore the name of the land itself. Caledor Dragon Tamer saw the sky turning the color of a dying star and knew that the prophecy of the end times was no longer a warning. It was a schedule. He didn't call for a vote. He didn't wait for the Phoenix King's permission. He sounded the horn of Magni, a call that resonated in the very marrow of the ancient drakes sleeping beneath the earth. From the deep magma chambers, the great dragons rose, shaking off the slumber of ages. They were the world's immune system, and they were preparing to purge the infection of Nagaryth. The meeting at the Vortex was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a collision of two incompatible versions of existence. On the black sand shores of the Isle of the Dead, Malekith began his ritual. The sky tore open like a wound. Raw, purple-black energy from the realm of chaos poured down in a torrent, turning the sea into a boiling soup of transmuted matter. The High Elven fleet, led by Caledor on the back of his ancient sun dragon, flew into a hurricane of literal madness. Arrows dissolved into butterflies. Silver armor melted into liquid light. Reality was beginning to unspool, and Malekith was the one holding the thread. At the climax of the ritual, Malekith drove his staff into the heart of the vortex. He intended to siphon its power, but he had underestimated the sheer cosmic pressure of the magic he was trying to tame. It was like a child trying to hold back an ocean with a wooden bucket.
The vortex, the great drain that kept the world from being swallowed by chaos, began to pulse with a lethal, erratic rhythm. The shockwave of the first hiccup in the ritual didn't just kill the sorcerers. It sent a psychic scream across the planet that caused every living creature to fall to its knees in agony. The veil between the worlds didn't just thin, it shattered. Then came the sound. It was the sound of a continent's spine snapping. The tectonic foundations of Ulthuan, which had stood since the old ones walked the earth, were sheared apart by the sheer force of the magical backlash. Imagine the horror of looking toward the horizon and seeing the land itself tilt upward toward the clouds. The great kingdoms of Naggareth were the first to feel the sea's embrace. Massive fissures, miles wide and bottomless, opened beneath the cities. Temples that had taken centuries to build were swallowed in seconds. The earth didn't just shake, it groaned with a voice that sounded like the death of a god. Naggareth, the land of the brave and the broken, began its final descent. The sea rushed in with the force of 1,000,000 Niagaras, a wall of cold, salt death that erased everything in its path. But Malekith, even as his world drowned, refused the dignity of defeat. With a scream that combined the power of his stolen magic and his eternal spite, he cast one final spell. He didn't save his people, he saved his fortresses. He ripped the great keeps of Anlek from the very earth, tearing them away from the bedrock with such violence that the sea below turned into a whirlpool of blood and stone.
The tide went black that day when the old glass split.
These became the Black Arcs, floating, jagged splinters of a sunken world, fueled by the souls of the sacrificed.
Cold bells in the mud. You heard the world crack like a branch in blood.
In the heart of the storm, Caledor Dragon Tamer realized there was only one way to stop the complete dissolution of the planet. He plunged his dragon and himself directly into the churning white fire of the vortex.
Sunder the skies, sunder the seas, sunder.
He used his own soul as a stitch, binding the magical tear together through sheer force of will. He saved the world, but the price was an eternity of consciousness trapped in a cage of pure energy, forever holding back the tide of demons that Malekith had invited in.
Crowns on the foam, like driftwood and
He became the eternal warden of a prison he built for himself, a sacrifice that the world would eventually forget, but without which the world would cease to be. The bitter exile. The dust finally settled, but the world was unrecognizable. Where there was once a unified continent, there was now a shattered ring of islands and a massive, gaping hole in the map. The High Elves stood on the cliffs of Lothern, looking north at the empty horizon where their brothers once lived. In the far north, the Black Arcs drifted like icebergs through the frozen seas, carrying the remnants of the Druki to the bleak land of Naggaroth. They carried no seeds, no art, no hope. They carried only the Iron Crown and a hatred that would outlast the stars. The ghost of a race. The Sundering was more than a geographic event, Soul Hacker. It was the moment the elven race became a ghost of itself. We are the survivors of a suicide attempt. Every time an elf looks at the sea, they are looking at the grave of their ancestors. The Witch King still sits in the cold, counting the years until the vortex fails and he can finish what he started. And Caledor still waits in the white fire, his mind slowly eroding under the pressure of the abyss. The world is a broken thing, held together by the sacrifices of those who are no longer here to see it. Listen to the wind on the coast. It isn't just the air. It's the sound of a continent still trying to remember what it felt like to be whole.